Good evening. Welcome. This is the After Hours Show. This is Joe in Norway. I'll be your cook this evening. I'm joined by Ann Lee, a retired college professor and community member at the Daily Coast. She's a member of the National Council of Independent Scholars and is a contributor to the book, The Political Economy of Art, Making the Nation of Culture. Hey, Ann. How's it going?
Hey there.
Oh,
hey there.
Kill the stop share. There we go.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Pasta for tonight. I'm hungry again. Damn it.
It looks a bit like a cornucopia, but to be honest, it's the last of remnants of our little situation here. We're packing up
the larder.
So I've got almost no food, no utensils, no serving dishes, and barely any food. So I have one pot, one knife, one wooden fork. I have a zucchini, some angel hair, tomato, scallion, garlic, a little lemon. I barely have any olive oil left. So we've got some black pepper, pickled chili, a good one, and salt.
Yum.
So I can't make a mess because we're moving out of here. So I have to make something as simple as possible. Angel hair, cook in 3 to 4 minutes. What? What I'm going to do is try one of these. I don't think I've done this online. I don't think I maybe did it once in my life. The cooking pasta in its water that becomes the sauce. So I'm going to saute the scallions and garlic, then add the pasta, add water, add the zucchini and tomato. And as that cooks, it creates its own sauce and reduces from the starch of the pasta will help create the sauce. And we'll see where we go. Got some midnight snack for our midnight cleaners.
Sounds good.
Seemed to be a hectic week this week. Julian Assange was free.
Yes. It's more interesting that
the debate happened.
Oh God.
Was the thing?
Yes. Hence the rant. God. So awful. Anyway, yes. It was interesting that Assange was had his case adjudicated in the Northern Marianas. Didn't want to set
Saipan.
Close, yes. Didn't want to set in the continental United States.
Was there was a risk, I would assume, of him getting abducted even at a U.S. territory?
Something. Yeah, I think it's the safest place to be. Probably is the Northern Marianas, at least. after World War II. Uh, we all set? Looks good.
I'll commence to cooking.
Might mention as an aside, in dishes that make their own sauce, there's a really interesting. Well, anyway, I found a good recipe for using olive no grape tomatoes and feta cheese, and and I probably use too much olive oil, in fact, but you can sort of bake it and create it creates a sauce. That's my way of saying creating one's own sauce. And but the idea that the feta cheese and the tomatoes together build the sauce, that's I kind of like that idea. Kind of do it all at once.
Yeah.
Originally, I thought it was supposed to be done in a pot, but it's done in an oven, so takes a little longer too. Anyway, that being said, it's been a tough week. Debate last night. People clutching pearls. The New York Times has weighed in to advise Biden to pull out. I assume actually that the early debate was meant to sort of do some of those things. It's obviously early to do its original purpose was to show that Biden could stand his ground against a very loud Trump. Essentially, Trump was the same as he was in the 2020 debate, noisy and this time filled with even more lies and conspiracy theories. The very little true was said, actually. I mean, all of the rally distortions, the speeches, all of those kind of incredible just vitriol.
What is the reasoning behind not having fact checkers? I heard that the technology is possible. They even do it in England.
They did have a fact checkers were not in real time. Daniel Dale, the official fact checker at CNN, did actually a very good piece that he's continuing to add to. He has a staff. They actually have a and it was pretty good too. If you go to CNN and look up Daniel Dale, D-A-L-E, you can see the a fairly rigorous fact checking of the entire speech and entire debate. And so that's worth looking up for those who. The fact of the matter is, speaking of which, on fact checking was an issue at CNN. They sort of said they might be able to provide it, but they didn't. And that's sort of amusing for all the usual editorial reasons. So, and of course, there was the simulcast commentary, as it were. The RFK Jr. was responded to it. I don't even know where it is or what channel it was on or whatever, but there was that little sideshow as well. I don't know if there's more interest in it. It would be interesting to see, of course, the fundraising component of the debate. And Trump decided that he would just pretty much just after the speech, he had lined up a whole bunch of, and I assume his little minion, Dan Scavino, did it for him. After all, Scavino used to be his caddy. It's certainly a rise to fame for Scavino. I mean, he's a millionaire from, whatever. A significant millionaire relative to a non-disclosure, which we should find actually kind of interesting. He's never been brought in front of any grand jury or anything. But anyway, that aside, Trump decided he'd post all of his golf videos to show that he's a good golfer. They had a little set too about their their golf handicaps. Overall, the thing was, Biden, for whatever, he does have a performance anxiety issue that does, I think that's been there since, he has a stutter, and those kinds of things, can cause trouble for certain occasions, and I think that's what happened. The camera angle was weird, lighting was weird too, at least in the version that I saw, and so he spoke much more softly, and anything is soft compared to Trump just yammering and sort of using his usual grimacing, etc. So it's hard. It was just hard to watch because if you looked at a printed transcript, you would see that Biden actually gave as good as he got, but you could see obviously from the responses that he wasn't as sharp as he should have been, because there was clearly a response for every bit of nonsense that Trump was cranking out, but there was no fact checking within the context, and Biden kept to he sort of saw that Trump wasn't going to be reined in terms of fact checking within the context of having two people who could easily have done the fact checking, but apparently we could have replaced Jake Tapper and Dana Bash with probably some sort of artificial intelligence. It's just, clearly they just cranked out stuff. And in fact, Bash was probably the only person who did a follow-up to try and get Trump to actually answer a question, because he would sort of veer off into some kind of deflection for some very serious questions, and holding him to account rather than having him ramble on. It's just sort of interesting. I think if there was any decision, it was a passive decision on CNN's part to not intervene at all in the fact issues and let facts come later on. As I said, Daniel Dale, you should look at Daniel Dale, CNN. Before he went to CNN, he was in Canada, and he's a Canadian, doing fact checking. And CNN liked him so much that they hired him for, was it the 2016 campaign? He does good fact checking. His are probably the best fact checking. It's unfortunate that he doesn't tweet very much, because there's just the usual bot problem, and I think there's an alternative that's not quite out there yet in terms of social media platforms for that kind of messaging. And needless to say, the Democrats who were going to do spin in the spin room sort of fled. I think there weren't very many of them, and save the vice president, who she came on and gave a lot of minutes for various folks, and did a good job of it, of course. And Gavin Newsom was there, which was also quite curious. I think there's if there's going to be a plan B, and it's not the best plan B, I would assert, and the only way they could get away with it, I think, is to have a more open convention in August for Democrats, and come what may, allow people to duke it out. And I think the optimum would be, rather than having a huge fight, a ticket that had people like Newsom and Harris would be a good, or even reverse it by having Harris and then Newsom as vice president, whatever. That's getting way.
My fingers crossed for Lieutenant Sanders' ticket is not really likely, you think?
Yum. Anyway, yes, there's likely craziness at work. So over at Daily Kos, everyone is just trying not to panic, and it's up to Biden. And Biden had a very good speech today, a 15-minute speech in North Carolina that was quite strong, forceful, very different. And in fact, once Biden, once the debate ended and Biden was still on the stage, he seemed quite animated and quite normal, actually, which was really, I don't know. He's been in public life for so long, but you get old, and I think there were just those performative issues. Also, Trump was just on set on 11, and he was just cranking out stuff, and very little of it had truth. It was all the usual things that you would hear in his rallies. That he would overstate numbers, make just outrageous claims, attack on issues that just weird, and through all the usual things, Hunter Biden, blah blah blah. So all of those things were there. That it's very
may I interrupt the
disappointing.
little food?
Here we go.
I have to
Yes.
call on. Can you hear me? Okay, my headset's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I just have to. If somebody could divert the pasta lord's attention while I break the rules here. There we go. Hopefully I won't. Hopefully I won't get in trouble. Shh, don't say anything.
I'm breaking pasta. Oh my God.
All right, now I'll crank that up and then get it. Hopefully I didn't put too much water in there. We'll be good. Now I'll just get the tomatoes going. All right. There was an epic amount of insults hurtled. Were there not? There's a lot of name calling.
Yes, a lot of the usual name calling. I think that's where it got down to the golf thing. I think they had a golf thing pre-prepared to unload, so that's probably why it wound up. Biden got better as the 90 minutes passed. It's just that the front end, I think it looked like deer in headlights, and it looked like he wasn't paying attention. He was clearly paying attention. I think the issue was that he had a lot of notes and he needed to get all those things squared away. And then Trump was just cranking out craziness, really with every turn happened. It's very odd. And so, but I think considering, what had happened before in their prior debates, that's kind of what happened. But they've had debates before in 2020. So, but needless to say, Biden didn't have to do any debates, and Trump avoided his debates and essentially defaulted to his usual shtick. It was pretty much the same deal. Trump is better on television than Biden is, but Biden, when you could actually hear what he was saying, he was actually making sense. He did have a couple of gaffes, that's true. He did some misidentifications and stuff, and whatever. We have those things that they just come with the territory. I think the issue of not fact checking from the moderators was a little problematic, and I mean, you could run a debate like that, and that's certainly within it's not unusual, but it seems pretty clear that CNN wanted to be as neutral as possible, considering that it was one of the first cable sponsored debates, and it was in their own studio rather than a neutral location, for example. Let's see. Otherwise, Trump spiked the ball, showed off his golf swing. It's very, I mean, it's an old person's golf swing, but it sort of works. And of course, the lie in the Trump case is that Trump decided he'd boast about his winning club championships. Of course, they were at his own club, right? With invited you have it at your own damn golf course, and he keeps announcing, I won the club championship. Well, he always wins the club championship. It's so bizarre. It's like, well, anyway, even golfers should be able to see the stupidity of that. And he also, I think, showed one of his anti-Biden golf edited things where he hits the golf ball and it hits Biden and knocks him down. So that's the usual stupidity occurred, I think, on online. Media Matters put out a graph that showed that Biden had, if you were counting articles from January till yesterday of the debate, by far there were more articles on Biden's age and fragility or whatever than there were on Trump's. It was just it's it's a trope, whatever. So that's another issue. Oh, actually, what was interesting was they stopped doing that in the month before the debate, but every month before was just like I don't know, 5-10 times the number of articles. So that's also interesting. You have to just look at the other things that are going on. The audience was 47 million as compared to 60 million, I think, the other prior debates. So a fair number of people, but it was actually less than one expected. But then again, you'll get sort of repetitions of it. They do repeat the entire debate several hours later after they do the spin room stuff. So there was literally a second audience for it. C-SPAN showed it again. I think they're probably going to show it again this weekend. So that's a whole nother thing. And of course, you can get it online. Needless to say, there will be lots of advertising that will spin on that particular issue, and there'll be all the usual hand wringing. There's going to be hand wringing. There is hand wringing. There was hand wringing this morning. If you watched any of the morning news shows in the United States, lots of hand wringing, and the usual kind of framing. People screw up their first debates. Obama did, blah blah. All these things are at work. So you need to sort of see it in context. One hopes, but the reality, of course, is that there's going to be some set of issues, and there's this underlying current that says, well, maybe Joe Biden should convince him to pull out, blah 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 blah. Frankly, he's still the president now, and he's still doing a good job. It's not like Reagan, who really truly did in the second term have total checkout for months. It was just not good. That's not happening here. So this is ridiculous in that sense. Anyway, that's a kind of the thing that has dominated the American news cycle. But if we're going to yak a little bit about the rest of the world, in fact, that got even messed up in the debate commentaries on Gaza. I think if anyone was paying attention, there's no one that's going to vote for, or very few people that's going to vote for Trump on a Gaza policy that is essentially allowing genocide. But that's kind of what happened in that particular case. Warfare continues. The data that is shifting, the issues of attacking Hezbollah in Lebanon and opening up a second front still remain possible. There's all of the usual things, and the sadness of it continues, and the details are, as usual, legion. In the rest of Europe, there's been, I think, more of a coalescing. The Europeans are still providing munitions and equipment, and some side suggestions that there would be not so much troops, perhaps trainers for the Ukrainians from various EU countries. There are other side issues going on. Georgia, for example, just stuff going on. The normal things of a a regular week are proceeding. The jamming, as I've mentioned before, of the first reports of commercial air traffic jamming having a slight effect on one flight trying to get across the Atlantic occurred, and it was because one of the avionics didn't reset after it had flown close to the primary jamming area, which is in Kaliningrad. They have a very large facility to do electronic warfare jamming in Kaliningrad, which is on the Baltic. And and they have been doing over the past several months, doing very serious jamming of various frequencies, some of which is to disrupt, of course, military activity, but also it's training as well, because the Russians continue, just like any other military, continue to train. And so there's the usual flying of airplanes into other people's space, etc. That's been going on. But on to Ukraine. Ukraine continues with warfare on most of the fronts. There's usually at least 10 major kind of skirmishes a day. There has been the usual background this week of ability to allow U.S. weapons to be fired into Russia. They're so far it's sort of okay if it's close to the border, and that's kind of the rule of thumb that's being operated. In that same sense, the transfer of a whole bunch of what are called ATACMS. They're an advanced missile that is really pretty accurate, and they have a certain precision. And the Ukrainians are using them mainly on air defense in Crimea, because it may be, from a strategic point of view, the best thing, as we discussed last week, is to cut off Crimea. Excuse me, because it's still Ukraine, and at least from one point of view, and so attacking with fairly massive force, that seems to be the way that they're doing it now. It is interesting, just as an aside, to see beachgoers, people sunning themselves on the Crimean beaches, suddenly run for cover when missiles come flying overhead, and in some cases dropping debris on the beach. So on the one hand, it's a war is occurring, but on the other hand, people are still going to the beach. So and we've had this over the years. That is, the summer comes, Russians go to Crimea because either they have a place in Crimea, a second home or whatever, or Dasha, and that they've been doing that for years, and so they're still sort of doing it, especially since they built a big bridge, and Putin builds a bridge, and people are thinking it is just Russia. Needless to say, it's not quite Russia, and things coming out of the sky. That being said, of course, it is mainly precision missiles that are attacking military targets, and it's if air defense knocks something down, unfortunately debris comes down, which is the case over Ukraine. Geez, that looks good, Joe. I am hungry. That was really quick.
Well, finished. That was quick and easy.
Yum. So that's kind of what's going on. There's missiles every damn day. Anywhere between 20 to 70 missiles of all kinds, drones, etc. There's absurd battles, mainly not with tanks, because both sides are kind of being very careful about drone attacks on tanks and losing those things. But there have been assaults. There's the continuing placement of untrained or less trained troops across at the front line. They're being sort of punishment battalion sort of attacks with Russian personnel.
Can you repeat that again? You said that they were not attacking tanks with drones?
They're attacking tanks with drones less, because they're not putting that many tanks out there. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's great detail about whether tanks, what kind of tanks are being used. There's not a lot of detail. We do know that the Russians apparently are pulling a lot of very old tanks um, out of inventory. T-54, T-55, T-62 tanks are being shipped somewhere. You have images of groups of these things being pulled out of storage, and I guess they're being refurbished. They still have all the dies or whatever to make fairly old tanks. I'm not sure it's 54s or 64s. The dominant tank that's being knocked out on the Ukrainian side is for a long period of time, the Ukrainians had their own industry in refurbishing T-64 tanks. So they have an entire line of very advanced with advanced electronics and stuff, targeting electronics, something called the T-64MV or something. And they do tend to have those in the frontline units, and they're quite good. And so the number doesn't necessarily indicate how old a tank is, particularly since some are, as I said, the Ukrainians have very updated modern ones. But the Russians are putting out a few more T-90s relative to the tank battle. But they're being very careful about it. No one wants to lose advanced electronics in their tanks and such. But that's the minutia of it. Russians are cranking out a lot of drones, and they're growing. And the Ukrainians go through 10,000 drones a month. That's the latest figure. And that's a lot of drones. And so it's pretty crowded air traffic up there. And there's some video of Ukrainian drones knocking down Russian drones by just sort of ramming them. And, it's sort of come to that. You have remote aerial combat in various places. Needless to say, that's just, it just continuing. We're in a prime season for battle. The ground is hard, and it is stuff's happening. Smaller things are occurring, boats being blown up and attacks on places near the Kerch Bridge. They haven't yet attacked the Kerch Bridge again. Likely they're waiting to just take, if they're going to decide to do it, they might just do it completely, or they're going to have these little hints that it's within their range. But preliminary to that, you always have to do prep. So the thing is taking out the S-300 and S-400 air defense systems. The claim by the Russians, probably propaganda, but there is a claim that there's these top line S-500 missile system, anti-air air defense system is supposedly being installed. Russians don't like to put that stuff out there because they tend to knock, the Ukrainians tend to be pretty good at knocking these things down. On the air defense side, for the Ukrainians, several countries have transferred more Patriot missile batteries to Ukraine. And technically, if they reach a system is not just simply one battery of missiles, it's a multiple battery with radar and a whole bunch of other things, and it's actually a complex, a mini complex. If they can get 8 of them, they can literally defend the entire airspace over Ukraine. Now that doesn't mean that you can do it perfectly, and of course you're going to run out of missiles, but that's kind of the current military situation, is that it is quite possible to, as the Ukrainians say, close the sky, and that parallel to the F-16s and et cetera, this is what's going on. It's a terrible thing, and people are dying, and this is just awful. The Ukrainians try not to hit civilian targets, whereas the Russians don't care, and they just I don't know, about 100 people maybe have died over the past couple of weeks as civilians in these kind of missile attacks. So that's kind of what's going on. Otherwise, the same business is occurring across. And then there's, of course, the British elections, which are continuing to get ridiculous, but and strange. But there will be a Labour government. Whether it's a good Labour government is going to be totally a different question. That's
Don't get me started.
It is quite strange. Although somebody did milkshake. What's his name?
Farage.
Yeah, Farage. Nigel Farage got hit with a milkshake this last week. So that's
Yes.
he did look as silly as, and the idea of using milkshakes is quite amusing just in general. Fortunately, we don't do much of that in this country. And although my favorite story is, of course, in 2020 when people, rather than making milkshakes, they were putting I was at concrete or plaster of Paris in cups and throwing them. So that was quite amusing. You'd think a milkshake was flying at you and you get hit with a piece of concrete. Anyway, that aside,
well, I'm going to say Nigel's used to the odd mishap. He's also been in a plane crash.
Oh, indeed, yes.
And he's also been in a car crash. And he blamed it all on the feds, deep state, spies.
Oh,
his
yeah.
political enemy. Yeah.
MI5. It's MI5.
Do, 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 do.
It's always MI5.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we can get back to American rants. I mean, Europe is still Europe. Israel is still Israel. It's just really, and I'm not. It's unclear to me whether within the current set of chaos we're going to still have a Netanyahu speech in D.C., and that will have its own little bearing on the sort of issue.
For one, I'm still banking on my hope that he's seeking refuge as a war criminal in the U.S.
Whether we would give him asylum, a whole other question. Yeah.
You know the most annoying thing about Netanyahu?
One of the big criticisms of him,
apart from his nutty dress sense, is the surname not Netanyahu sounds very jolly, doesn't it? Netanyahu!
BD.
And he's not at all a jolly man. He's not
BD.
a jolly man.
No. And and unfortunately obvious about his messaging. You know who he's really talking to when he talks in English as opposed to Hebrew. It's really quite interesting how messages are slightly different when you see them in translation.
One of the big criticisms in Israel of Netanyahu was that he spoke with such good English. The fact that most of his schooling took place in the States. So
MIT graduate.
Really a product of the U.S.
Indeed. Well, that's always the general thing, isn't it, in Israel? The difference between those who are, more Europeanized, let's put it that way, and of course the more obvious differences in terms of birth. But yeah, always an issue. It probably is an alienating thing for him relative to the the block of the Orthodox right wing sector, and particularly with the recent thing that they're going to draft religious. They're eliminating religious exemptions for conscription. So that cuts both ways, of course.
Maybe it'll slow down the killing machine.
One hopes. It sort of, or whether we just simply were going to have a different brand of war crime. But anyway, yeah. Well, so that's going on. I think the other reason why, to go back to Russia, why there was such a reorganization at the leadership is that those who have been reassigned to less important positions by Putin, they're the ones on the list for going up to The Hague or whatever in terms of war crimes. So that's another thing. They've been named. Was it Shiogu or whatever the former Minister of Defense is mentioned in that context. So that's happening as well. But to go back, as I said, to America, it's the left is panicking. It is. It's just panicking. Everyone's panicking, and everyone's, the knives are coming out, and people need to relax. I think that's the kind of dominant position. People need to sort of just see. I think to spin it in the other, to frame it in the other direction, Trump truly did show, how unreasonable he is, how those things that he has threatened to do were all there sort of lurking in the background. He tried to not talk about how much of a dictator he was going to be, but it's pretty clear he seemed a little more crazy and a little bit more dictator-like. And as I asserted in a piece yesterday, is that the debate winner was a Gish Gallop because he just kept cranking out terrible things. But there were good lines last night. The having sex with a porn star, you have the morals of an alley cat that Biden mentioned. I think that's a good line. I think that has legs, as they say. Because Trump himself said, I did not have sex. He and this is with all due respect to mocking Bill Clinton. I did not have sex with that porn star. That's the ads make themselves. So there's that. For me, that was the best one of last night because you can actually run that and you can see the kind of issues that automatically, there's a subtext to the Bill Clinton. I did not have sex with that one thing.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, but I did have sex with her relations. All of them, even the boy.
God, if you actually, the Democrats have to, really crank the stuff up. There is so much there that is in some media, but not all media. We bring it back again. That is the pedophilia things that Trump has that were, always settled out of court. There's a lot of that there, right? They're just there. It's not rumors. There was actual litigation and a variety of other things. So there's stuff there, and I'm sure it is why Trump's relations with the National Enquirer were so still friendly in some ways. If you recall the trial, that it is it's just all there. People need to get with it, and I think things will shift. I think Biden needs to wait to see what happens on July 11th when whatever sentencing is going to occur for Trump. It's likely that he's going to get probation. He's not going to spend any time incarcerated, which we can only hope for. But I would say that that's going to be an issue. But he has been convicted, and so that's just there. That's he's going to have to. I guess I'm not sure whether it's a commission or whether the governor of New York has that kind of power. But next best thing is to make sure one of his crowd becomes the governor of New York, I suppose. So that's. So
is his community service going to amount to becoming president and making America great?
Yeah. That's his community service, right? That's what he'll claim, certainly.
Yeah.
If he gets probation, then that is the justice system saying what he did was not that serious. Doesn't matter that he was convicted of 34 felonies, which I don't think Biden even mentioned last night.
No, he didn't. No,
didn't. Why would you, right? Because that's not unprecedented.
No.
Why would you bother to mention it? He called him an alley cat, though.
Just a handful of connections.
Sort of prosaic.
That debate was just an unmitigated disaster.
It was.
The people who were voting, who haven't made up their minds. Devoted Biden voters are going to vote for him, even if he's unconscious.
Right.
But the people in the middle who haven't made up their minds yet, which is, mind-boggling to all of us, but there are lots of them, and they're going to decide the election. And they're going to be exposed to wall advertisements of Joe Biden looking like he's a deer caught in the headlights. And it's going to be playing on radio, television, and internet nonstop, social media, everything. He needs to get the hell out of the race. I mean, that he's not like Reagan was in his last months in office. Okay, but he's running for another 4 years.
Indeed.
So, I mean, a year from now, he could be like Reagan.
He could be, indeed. I no argument there. Harsh, you have a question, comment?
Yeah, I think so. To follow up what Professor Jay said, right? Because there's a convention in Chicago in like 5 to 6 weeks, right, or 7 weeks, something like that.
Right,
So
August.
So are delegates supposed to select him, or can they switch?
Right.
And my other thing was like, who would replace him actually? Because the point is about electability, right? Electability. And so who do you think can be that person?
Oh, well, there's a lot of work going on to do that. We've seen Pete Buttigieg more. I've seen Pete Buttigieg more times in the last 24 hours than I've seen in 6 months. So there's a lot of movement. I would assert to you there's movement. You could even, if you're a conspiracy theorist, Gavin Newsom being very prominent in the spin room, that was a big deal. So you got stuff going on. I think it's always been
the frying pan into the toilet with a booty gig. Jesus.
It's a plan. There's a plan B somewhere, and we're going to see how that operates. It's going to be a little strange.
What do you think of Pritzker? Because he's the governor of Illinois, right? And he's
certainly.
He's been good too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a very smart guy and a very rich guy. And
Whitmer as well, right? From Michigan?
Mm-hmm. Illinois, right? Pritzker? You were talking about
Pritzker is from Illinois. Yeah.
No, I'm saying Whitmer, the Michigan one. Michigan governor, what's her name?
Oh, Whitmer. Yes.
Yeah,
Whitmer is going to be a big deal. And so you do have actually a field, and within the relative, to talk about this in a more perhaps objective way, this would be normal. We'd be at the moment, where conventions are happening in an election year, and we might not know who's going to get it. So it's not really that different. I mean, it seems to have been incredibly tedious the last 2 years, but it's sort of a regular schedule. And as I say, I think there's two ways to look at the early debate as that kind of issue. It's unfortunate that it came out the way it did, but that's kind of history at work.
But what would actually make this switch happen? Or maybe
there are delegates. You would have within the convention, you would have to have delegations suddenly agitate. People committed to Biden would have to defect, essentially, either releasing delegates and all that other shit would have to happen. All these other things would have to occur. But if Biden pulled out, there'd have to be, well, I'm going to release all my delegates and blah, 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 blah. And there's all this sort of movement that you normally see in a convention. So that could happen.
What part does this Schumer, Jeffries, and Pelosi have on this, though?
I don't know. They have an effect. They are super delegates technically. I mean, if you just look at it, it's pretty much the same as before in a standard how the Democrats operate. They have super delegates, they have state delegates, you have delegations. Fortunately, none of them are, well, they could be divided. Who knows how they've been constituted? You could have a bunch of because also that there are a lot of Biden delegates who probably former Bernie people. There's probably a fair number of squad-like people around there. So there could be this weird version of that running around. It's sad, but that's kind of where we are now, and incumbency still counts, though. I mean, you know, I think Biden is going to have to show, he's going to have to do some more bicycling or something. I don't know.
And I got to close out my section. My internet
Okay.
is very choppy.
we're close.
I'm not stable at all here
Okay.
anymore. So we might be losing. You
on
might
that.
be losing me.
All right. With respect, let's John, if you want to talk about Twilight Zone, and then we'll give our goodbyes.
All right. Well, tonight on the Twilight Zone, I don't think
I can't hear anybody. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
I don't think even Trump would be able to call this episode of the Twilight Zone
I'll
more.
just say it's one pot angel hair pasta.
Hello?
You're frozen, Joe. I think we're close to the end of our activity. So we're gonna sign off and advise you that you know, we'll be here next week. We'll try and do better next time. I don't even think we're gonna get to the music.
Joe says he lost his connection.
Yes. So bye-bye.
Hello.
Oh, bloody hell. The YouTube connection is still up, so we need to Joe needs to kill that. All right, I suppose I could kill it on my end. Maybe. Damn it.
All right. Did you close out the show? I got
we're back.
on another
We're back.
device here. I don't know what's happening.
YouTube. No, YouTube is still on. Joe, YouTube is still on.
Okay, let me go close it down.
All right. Bye. We'll see you next week.
Did you close out?
Well, I have. But
Yeah,
YouTube
did you
is
close
still
out
on.
the show?
Yes, I did. We just didn't have music.
You can't do any worse.
Yeah.
It's not better than Biden.